Hello everybody and welcome to SVC Sports Weekly. I'm Mike Nosek alongside Dave Gage, head baseball coach here at Southern Vermont College. We apologize for our brief hiatus as of late, but we're back into the flow of things. I know Dave has kind of got your routine down for practice, preseason baseball, and all that fun stuff, so we will be back to SVC Sports Weekly, not bi-weekly, tri-weekly, or whatever you may call us. Dave, both basketball teams wrapped up their seasons last week. A little unfortunate ending for both teams. Women's basketball needed a win over Mitchell College back on Tuesday. They were leading at half. Mitchell battled back, tied it up going into the end of regulation, and then ended up with the 61-58 win over the Mountaineers. And it's just really tough to see that young team, get eliminated from postseason play that way. But again, you got to give credit where credit is due, and they had a great season despite what the record might indicate.
Yeah, they late in the season, the scores were all very close, and it just shows that they were a competitive team all year. Like you said, despite the record, they struggled to find ways to win. And other than that, they played well, and they played well at a lot of games. They just might have had a 2-minute lapse or a 5-minute lapse that cost them a game. And in that Mitchell game, they were leading, and Mitchell got fouled with, I think it was 2 seconds left, and made both free throws to push the game to overtime, if I remember correctly. And, it's just one of those breaks that didn't go our way, and it sort of was a wrap-up of the entire season within that 2 seconds of that foul call.
Absolutely. And then the next day, they lost against Bay Path College here at home, 71-55. And wrapped up the season this past Saturday, as we mentioned, with a 62-53 loss at Leslie University. So again, I don't know if that Mitchell game kind of took the air out of their tires, and I wouldn't say gave up is the word, but you could kind of see that they didn't have that complete drive as they might have had they won the Mitchell game and still had a chance for the postseason. But still, great work by all those young ladies. Updated the record book yesterday, and we saw a lot of records being broken. Amber Flagg finished the season third in the all-time single season record book. She had 430 as a freshman, not too bad. Javacia White, another freshman, finished with 238 rebounds. That's good enough for second on the leaderboard. Amber Flagg's free throw percentage for the season, 79.5 on 210 attempts. That's first ever. And you have to also talk about Kayla McKenzie, the tall forward there who finished with 60 blocks. That's not only good enough for first all-time in a season, it's also first all-time for a career. And she's only got one season down. So you see these kind of numbers and it says, wow, there was a great amount of success there. And you just hope that it carries into next year and results in wins.
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of great individual performances. It's not like one person redid all the record books. Amber had a tremendous season. We talked about her on here, I'm pretty sure, every single week, between her scoring 28 points or, having 10 assists or what she had on any given night. And then, Kayla's 60 blocks. That's phenomenal. And, Javacia with the amount of rebounds she had. And so there's a lot of talent going forward, all three freshmen. So they got 3 years left. Hopefully you get another good recruiting class in for next year. And you combine that, and now you maybe get another 3 good players. Now you have six very good players. And now you start competing in the conference playoffs and such. But as you said, and they have a lot of good role players behind those three. It's not like those three are the only 3 talented players. There's a lot of good role players on this team. They just couldn't find ways to win in clutch situations this year. But again, young team.
Kayla McKenzie averaging 2.6 blocks per game. That's good enough for 17th, tied for 17th rather, in the nation. So as a freshman, that's outstanding. And I think, Coach Quinn mentioned it, that when you watch her play, her arms are kind of down, and all of a sudden they just fly up and they're blocking the ball. So definitely a weapon that can be used, and she might end up shattering the career blocks record as she continues throughout her SVC career. And you mentioned Flag. Again, 17.2 points per game as a freshman. Not bad at all. Definitely in the consideration and in the running for Rookie of the Year in the conference. And those awards should be announced either later in this week or early next week. So, hopefully by the next time we do a program, we could possibly be talking about her winning the Rookie of the Year award. Move on to men's basketball now. They lost against Mitchell and Leslie University back last week. Mitchell on Tuesday. Those Mitchell games were makeups from Saturday, then Sunday, then Monday, resulting from Winter Storm Nemo. So, that storm kind of threw everything off, including our program. That's, we're going to blame it on Nemo. That's why you guys haven't heard us here in a little bit. Again, not ideal results. In the Mitchell College game, they lost 93-80, but that margin of defeat doesn't really indicate how hard fought that game was. It went back and forth, and I think a lot of their games end this way where they lose by 11, 12, 13 points, but they're only down 3 or 4 with, a couple minutes to go, and then it just kind of gets into the foul trouble thing, and the other teams convert their free throws, and we're never really able to close that gap.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. That game was very close the entire time, and I remember late in the game looking at the scoreboard and saying, how is this a 10-point game? Or, and it ended up being 13. But I will say that Mitchell College team, I think, is one of the better teams that came to our gym this year. And I don't know if they just played really well, but they can play. And like I said, I thought for the most part of that game, it was a very tight game. But I think, one last thing about that game is Tayshawn Johnson was honored as a senior, for senior night, and he had a phenomenal game that night, played very well, and no better way to go out that night as a senior and have one of your better games of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. He had 33 points in that loss against Mitchell, kind of carrying the momentum. Those of you who are listening might have seen the dunk that we posted online. That really, sparked the crowd, sparked the team, gave them a lot of energy and momentum, and he carried that throughout the night. Shot 16 for 20 from the field for even 80%. And as I mentioned, season high 33 points. That was exactly one more than he needed to tie Chris Davis for third on the all-time SVC list. With that extra point, and then with Leslie's game, he ended up with 1,467 points in only 3 years. Again, putting him third all-time for SVC players. Again, updating the record books yesterday. Not so much of a mix as we had on the women's side. It pretty much seemed like Tayshawn Johnson was the only one being put in. He tied his season total from last season. 534 points. Followed up this year with 534 points. Both good enough for 5th on the all-time single-season points board. But again, go back to 1,467 points in only 3 years. It's really, truly a testament to how good of a player he was.
Yeah, I mean, we may have another record with 534 points in back-to-back years. I might have to check the NCAA for that, but you're right. For the amount of points that he scored in 3 years and to be third on the school's all-time list it just shows his consistency. There wasn't a game that Tay didn't go off. He could have had a bad game and he still went for 18. I think you were saying to me the other night that there wasn't a game this year that he scored under 10 points. So, and the thing is with him, he's getting face guarded. He's the guy that other teams are keying to shut down, and he still scores 22, 23 points a game. So he's a very, very good player, and I know Tay's dream is to go overseas and play, and I don't know where he stands with that, but I definitely believe that he deserves a chance, and hopefully wish him the best in his future endeavors.
Absolutely. Just a few more numbers here to throw out. Johnson finished with 22.2 points per game. That was good enough for first overall in the conference. We mentioned all of his career points. I believe he averaged 20.7 points per game in his career. So you look at him 2 years ago as a freshman, still being able to put up those kind of numbers, or a sophomore essentially, after transferring, and that's incredible to be able to average that many points throughout your career. and have this kind of success that he did. We were talking about his rebounding ability last night. In the single season book, you don't see his name in the top 5. He didn't have one season where he recorded more than 223 rebounds, who currently is owned by Joe Karnick there at number 5. But in his 3 years, he was good enough to land himself 4th on the career rebounding list with 584 across those 3 years. So again, just consistency, as you mentioned, the ability to go in and night out and just get smacked every time he's going to the hole and still be able to go all game and go up strong to grab all those boards is something that's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. He's very versatile. There's times where you see him bringing the ball up the court, and there's times where you saw him posting up. He can play at any position on the court, but the one thing that you knew is you were going to get 20 points and somewhere close to 10 rebounds a night.
And then, of course, the free throw percentage for his career, he ranks first with an even 74.0%, making 311 out of 420 attempts at the line. And all 3 of his seasons are on the top 5 single season list. So that just kind of goes hand in hand with his consistency at the line and the ability to shoot the free throws, which the numbers don't lie. He was able to do a lot because he's not afraid to drive to the hoop, get those fouls, put the team on his back when needed to, and try to take over the game late. So congratulations again to Tay. As we mentioned, all conference awards coming out here shortly, and I'm sure that we'll be mentioning his name in that group. Finally, we'll cap it off with men's volleyball. They had a loss at the Sage Colleges back on Wednesday, 3-0. Sage, a pretty good team, receiving votes when it comes to the national ranking. They bounced back, went on the road Saturday to Regis College and swept Regis after sweeping Mount Ida, both 3-0 wins. And then they carried that into Monday night's match at Leslie University, another 3-0 win. So they're back to 500 on the season. They're 2-0 in the conference, and kind of getting all those gears clicking as they move through their conference schedule here.
Yeah, I think the key number that you said there was 2-0 in conference play. And, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mike, but all 5 of their losses have been to teams that are at least receiving votes. And, so it shows that they're right there because they're beating the teams that they should. They're ahead of a lot of the teams that they're playing. And they're at 500 first time. The goal is to be over 500 this year for first time in program history, talking to Coach Stokes. And to be at that point, it's a great place to be. And now hopefully they can beat a team that is receiving votes and get themselves onto that receiving votes list.
And, this weekend is going to be a real test and a true indicator of where they're at this season. And it's kind of funny that they have multiple matchups against non-conference opponents this season, including Springfield College, MIT, as well as Elmira, who, again, as you mentioned, all either in the top 15 or receiving votes at some point during the season. So it'll be interesting to see. They lost 3-0 to Elmira back at the Golden Flyer Invitational a few weeks ago, and then they're going to play Elmira at the MIT Scramble at the end of the season. So if there's a different result there, you'll see how much progress they've made. Or you could also look at it as, well, Elmira also made progress to be able to blank them. And numbers can be strewed about in different ways. But again, it is interesting to be able to look at that and compare where they're at. But going back to this weekend, big weekend for them. They've got a tri-match at Daniel Webster on Saturday, which also features Springfield College. Number 1 and pretty much a powerhouse when you talk to anybody who is in the collegiate men's volleyball game. National champions of the year last year. And again, it's going to be a great test and see where they're at.
Yeah, and there's no better way to measure yourself where you stand during a year than to face a ranked opponent. If you beat the number 1 team in the country, I don't think you can say, well, we're number 1, but you can say, hey, well, we're pretty good. Even if you just compete with them and put up, a good contest against them and and get to that 25-21, or maybe take a game off of them or a set, or and you'll see where you're at. And the nice thing is, as you said, they play them 3 times, so we're going to be able to see improvement throughout the year.
As I mentioned, they're playing at Daniel Webster, so of course they're going to play against Daniel Webster. The Eagles, they're from Nashua, New Hampshire, are sitting at 4-4, so 500 as well. They're only 1-0 in the conference, with their sole NECC match coming against Newberry, in which they won 3-2. So it's hard to look at their schedule and really determine where they're at. Currently, they stand at number 3 in the rankings, or the conference standings rather, with the Mountaineers at 2nd. Now the Eagles had an early season loss to MIT 3-2. And SVC lost to MIT 3-1. So again, you can kind of take those numbers and be them as they may for whatever they're worth. I don't think Daniel Webster is going to be any slouch when it comes down to it.
No, I remember watching this team last year, and I'm not quite sure how much they graduated from last year's team, but they were pretty good. They could serve. Their issue was they didn't have a lot of depth. They only played 6 guys, so when they were out of rotation, we took advantage of it pretty well. But I think this team is going to be very good. They're very well coached. The coach was 2-time Coach of the Year. Before Josh came into the conference, and now he's been Coach of the Year for the men's side the last 2 years, and on the women's side this year as well. So, it's we'll see what comes of it, but it's definitely going to be a test, and then it's going to be even more of a test with Springfield.
And then they move on to Endicott College on Sunday. That's a match that is being made up from February 10th, last Sunday. Had to be moved from Winter Storm Nemo again. So that's going to be here at home, 1 o'clock, when the Mountaineers host the Gulls from Endicott College. Currently stand at the top of the standings in the conference. They're at 7-4, 2-0 in the conference. They've beat Elms, they've beat Regis. They did beat Daniel Webster, however, that was technically a non-conference game. So the Gulls, definitely a quality opponent, definitely going to be another great match. And as we mentioned, the Mountaineers got to come back from 2 extremely tough matches on Saturday in New Hampshire, wake up and go right back at it against a quality opponent in Endicott.
Yeah, tough weekend, in conference play, but at the same time, they get 2 conference wins. You're sitting at 4-0, and you start controlling your own destiny. So we'll see what comes of it, but it's going to be a tough one.
And then looking ahead towards next week, see if they get any kind of break in there. Not really. Friday night, Newberry comes in. Saturday, they're right back at Endicott. So, it's going to be a really tough stretch here for the Mountaineers. And if by the end of next week they're still at 500, I think, Stokes and the crew would be happy with that. Maybe not completely satisfied, but they certainly wouldn't be, disappointed with themselves by any stretch.
Yeah, as coaches, you always look at a stretch in your schedule and say, well, this is where we're going to determine if we're going to be above 500, at 500, or below 500. And I think the men's volleyball team is in that stretch, this week and next week.
Absolutely. So as we mentioned, the only home game this week for the Mountaineers is men's volleyball here on Sunday at 1 o'clock when they welcome Endicott College. So be tuned in for that. If you can't make it, you can watch the live video stream online. Just check out svcathletics.com and the men's volleyball schedule page for that link. We'd like to thank you all for tuning in this week to SVC Sports Weekly. We hope that you will tune in next week and hear all the recaps from this week's men's volleyball action. Go Mountaineers!